In 1975, the cry of not 1 acre more echoed from Te Hapua to Parliament, bringing together thousands from across the country to seek justice for the ongoing loss of Māori land. Half a century on, the questions raised by that march still resonate strongly. Mea nei te kōrero a John Boynton.
50 years ago, the first small steps were taken of a 1,000-kilometre hikoi. People slept overnight at Aotearoa's northernmost marae at Te Hapua. The following morning, the march was led off by a 79-year-old queer, Whina Cooper, and her group Te Rōpū Matakite o Aotearoa, protesting the alienation of Māori land. Whānau of all ages were on the journey. Some by car, some by foot, all heading to their final destination, Parliament Grounds, Wellington. They crossed the length of Te Ao Māori. A carved po whenua was carried at the front of the march. Symbolically, it would not touch the ground until land grievances were settled. The journey was physically and emotionally tough, requiring intense energy and focus over a month. As they passed through towns, Kai Tautoko turned out to encourage and help fund the hikoi, while the media captured their growing momentum. The hikoi approached the Auckland Harbour Bridge, then crossed over into the city. The numbers of marchers had grown to thousands, the biggest march that Aotearoa has ever witnessed. The po whenua led the way as they moved south. The logistics were enormous. All these marchers needed somewhere to rest, sleep and eat. Marae and schools opened their doors. There were many familiar faces, including poet Hone Tūwhare, Te Ao Māori visionary Hannah Jackson, and activist Tame Itzi. Then finally, 1 month later, on the 13th of October 1975, they arrived en masse at Parliament. Whina Cooper presented a petition signed by 60,000 people to Prime Minister Bill Rowling, demanding a halt to the loss of Māori land. Not one more acre. The po whenua, which never touched the ground during the hikoi, is now a taonga housed at Waitangi. It still remains off the ground.
And our thanks to photographer Christian Heinig and Alexander Turnbull Library for those stunning images of the Land March. Following the march, the Waitangi Tribunal was established. And 5 decades later, there's been $2.7 billion of redress to iwi across Aotearoa. But yet, the kōrero remains. Now, joining us now to discuss the legacy and ongoing impact of that momentous event in Māoridom are two dedicated activists and hikoi participants who were in that montage footage you just saw there. They are Rose Lazarus-Spicer and Deidre Nehua. E oku whaia, tēnā kōrua. Thank you so much for joining us. I really, really appreciate it. Whai Rose, why did you join?
Why did I join? A lot of reasons. There's more than one. Growing up in my kāinga in Te Hapua there with my queer, she brought up all us mokos, and hearing her stories, you know, land being taken, not knowing the changes, why the changes from hapu land to lands and survey, to doc, to private. You know, there was all that. There was kōrero about our reo. There was kōrero about her brothers that went to war and came back damaged by it. There was kōrero about us losing our reo, our identity, our culture. There were a lot of reasons for me to do that hikoi. During that time, the Crown were wanting to take coastlines off our people, and then trying to pacify things by saying, oh, we'll swap it with some other land, which was ours anyway, but was swamp. So it was all those things. And then one night, a motorbike comes up our drive, and in walks Cyril Chapman and Vivian Hutchinson.
Wow.
And said, hey, mate, we're going on a march. We're going to march to Wellington. Mo te aha? Why? Why are you doing that? And they said, well, all our land, 63 million acres we had in 1862,
Gee, you mentioned Cyril, ka tangi te ngākau.
Ai, ka tangi te ngākau.
Whaia Deidre, why did you join the hikoi, knowing there are risks, right? Knowing there would be impacts?
Well, like Rose, I listened to all the kōrero of our kaumata and koe, in particular my grandmother. And I come from Whangaruru, and I love that land deeply. It's directly connected to my heart. And at the time, Pat Hoskins was the chair of the Ngāti Wai Trust Board, and he was doing a lot of work to make sure that Ngāti Wai knew that our whole coastline was going to be stolen by the government. So I went and visited my grandmother and said, this is what's happening, and I want to march for Whangaruru, for Motu Kōwhai, which was where our home was. And she said, you go for us, you do that for our whānau. And the risk for me was if we didn't go, not if we did. The risk of, well, whatever the risks were of going, didn't even enter my head. The risk was if we didn't go, we would lose our home. There would be nothing left for my children and my mokopuna and for future generations.
How important was it to have someone like Dame Whenakupa leading that kaupapa?
Well, I think obviously it had to have a leader, and I think she was the right person for the time. She had that charisma. She knew how to talk to people in government. She knew how to talk to our people, and she was already a natural leader. But behind that, there were many, many, many other people who were also involved in the leadership. I think of Carmen Kirkwood, who was Whana Secretary at the time, Witi McMath, I said I wouldn't name people because there's so many people who were leading from behind, who were organising from behind. And as you said in the introduction, the logistics of it was massive. And the logistics of it started taking place long before the actual march took place.
It gained traction as it went throughout the motu, Rose.
Yeah.
You were described as one of the hardcore marchers because you marched as a 19-year-old the whole way. When you think about that now, what comes out? What are you reminded of? What sticks
Sore
out?
feet.
Sore feet. Well, sandals will do that,
Yeah, sore feet. Kumarahau. My grandmother saying to me, you get those blisters on your feet, piss on them. That'll fix that.
Mi o wawai.
Yeah. Mimi ki runga o wawai, ka pai. Kumarahau, drink it so you don't get mawiwi. Keep it so it's strong so you have it the next morning, an hour before you head off so you have your number twos. Save the rest to mirimiri, all your aches and pains the next night. So kumarahau played a really big part in me doing that hikoi. Wow. Sandals, going through the snow, you're putting on 2 pairs of socks, And I only wore sandals because I couldn't afford anything else. That's what I had. That's what I used. And as Deidre said, it happened. You listened to your queer, you listened to the stories, the time was there, led by a queer that was big part of the Māori Women's Welfare League. Everyone knew her. My auntie Mira was part of that, you know, so you had to do it.
Yeah.
You could not do it.
Yeah.
You know, the cry was too loud.
There's a photo, Deidre, which actually you said to me as well, as you're going under the bridge in Wellington. You're wearing the yellow T-shirt. We saw it in the montage with the hands up. And it looked joyous. Was it?
Yeah, that day it was. That was the day we marched into Wellington. And there was this energy. There was this energy on that day.
Wow.
And just either before or after, no, before that photo was taken, they were building the motorway into Wellington then. And I still have this snapshot in my mind. Up on the hill, there were all these bulldozers looking down on us as we were marching, and all the drivers had stopped and were kind of leaning against their machinery and standing. And most of them were Māori, and we were like, "What are you doing up there? Get down here, get down here, join the land march." And it seemed like hundreds, but a lot of them came, left their machinery, came down that hill and joined the march, and we had been cheering and clapping for them doing that. But it was an electric day.
Yeah.
When you think about where we're at a nation now, and there have been other hikoi, but when you think about where we're at as a nation now, in the current political context, what do you make of that now, Whāros? E rongo anau te tangi?
You know, what happened in 75, we were kids, you know. We went out there with a dream and a hope that everything was going to be okay, you know. I remember walking along, you know, the harbour bridge and hearing the tupunas and feeling them. I remember walking down Queen Street and seeing the looks on people's eyes, people crying, look of what's going on, wanting to know more. You know, it was just, as Deidre said, it was electric in Wellington, but seeing people starting to realise, hey, this is a peaceful hikoi out there, letting people know what's happening to our people, you know.
So very quickly, Deidre, because I've got to go, but very quickly, when you think about now, where we are now, does it hurt? Are you mamai at the way in which our current political context sits in this nation 50 years on?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I never imagined as a young girl back then that 50 years later, our mokopuna would be having to do hikoi and fight for exactly the same thing that we were, for the privilege and the right to just be Māori.
Yeah.
And I guess the sad thing about the way things are today is all of those Māori who are in Parliament. You want me to name them? All of those Māori who are in Parliament, you Māoris in Parliament, you're selling us out.
Yeah, big time.
Your people will curse you through the ages.
Yeah.
Tēnā koe. Can I say tēnā koe? Thank you both very much for talking to us today. I really, really appreciate it. It means a lot. Ngā mihi nui kia kōrua.
Tēnā koe hoa.
Ngā kōrua. As of course Deidre Nehua and Rose Lazarus-Spicer.